Welcome back to Studio 701. Well, our next guest has been saying good morning to public radio listeners since 1981. Michael gets to sit down with Dave Thompson in a one-on-one interview. Michael, go ahead and take it away.
Good morning, Dave. Good to see you here today.
Good morning, Michael. Thank you very much.
So for everyone, you probably don't know his face very well as much as you know his voice. This is Dave Thompson of our neighbor over at Prairie Public Radio.
Right across the street, actually. It was cool.
It was a pretty easy commute for you
yeah,
over here today.
Not very much traffic this morning, so
Yeah.
that was good.
Well, Dave, I'm excited to have you here today because we heard that you have been involved in journalism here in North Dakota for 40 years.
Actually, it's been about 43. This was my third job out of college.
Really?
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit, obviously 40 years, you've been doing this a long time, you've learned a lot. What are some secrets to your success in this business?
Well, it's like they tell you when you're in radio, it's an intimate medium, so you're before a mic, you might be talking to hundreds of people, thousands of people, but really you focus on one person. So I focus on a friend. So I'm talking to a friend, giving them the news of the day, trying to be very conversational and trying to get your attention, because could you imagine listening to the radio when you're getting ready for work in the morning, you're going in the shower, you're shaving, you might have kids that are going to school, and if I can get somebody to stop eating their breakfast for just a moment to listen to what I have to say, I've won that battle, I guess.
Yeah. How did you get your start actually at Prairie Public?
Well, this is very interesting because my first two jobs out of college, well, in college I worked at a station that was public, and I really fell in love with public broadcasting. That was the old KFJM in Grand Forks at UND. Then I got a job at commercial radio back here in Bismarck. Then I went back to Grand Forks to work at a commercial station there, and then I had heard through the grapevine that Prairie Public was going to go on the air with a public radio station in Bismarck, and a Bismarck native, I applied, and I got the job. And I started 2 months before the station went on the air.
So you've been doing, obviously you are the voice that we all hear when we wake up in the morning. Tell us, what time are you starting in the day?
My alarm rings at 2:45.
Oh my
that
goodness,
is,
Dave.
if I hear the alarm, often I shut the alarm off before it rings. But yeah, I get up because I need to go through a little bit of a routine. I look at internet, I look at news sites to see what's going on, and I check the road reports and things like that to see what might be ahead of me in my 6-block commute to the station. So yeah, it's interesting, and I've been doing it day in, day out for 40 years.
Yeah. Does it feel stale? Does it feel fresh? What is it like doing this for such a time?
I always approach it like you've got a blank slate when you go into work in the morning. You don't know what the day is going to bring to you. And I'm the one who gets to set the assignment list for me here in Bismarck and my 2 reporters in Fargo.
Yeah.
And by the time 9 o'clock rolls around, that assignment list is torn up often, and you're doing a bunch of other things. That's what I love about it. I love about the news business, is it's so different every day. It may seem routine, but something happens that changes that routine.
Dave, you've seen so much of what's happened in this world over the last 40 years. I mean, from the Challenger shuttle to different presidents coming in and out. Any stories that you've done over the years that were exceptionally meaningful or memorable to you?
I would say several, but I was thinking about a few when I was preparing for this. Number one, of course, the day that the planes flew into the World Trade Center. It was crazy because our governor at the time, Governor John Hoeven, was out of town. He was in Minneapolis and couldn't get a flight back to Bismarck. So we spent the time tracking him down and then tracking down anybody from North Dakota who might have been there. And that was a long day. I remember that. I remember watching. We had a television monitor, and we saw the planes go into the World Trade Center, the second plane at least. And I don't think I got to sleep until about 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock that night, because it was one of those news days that was just crazy. A couple other things more on a local level. The shooting of the marshals in 1983. I've got a quick story about that if I can tell it. I was working Sunday night to prep for Monday morning, which I often do, go in Sundays and take a look at what I need to have for a Monday morning story. And I happened to hear on those old police scanners, officer down, and I happened to look which channel it was, and it was the Federal Marshal's channel. And I'll never forget this. I called the Federal Marshal's office in Fargo, and somebody answered the phone, and the poor guy was in tears. And I said, has there been a shooting? He says, yeah, I really can't talk about it. And I said, I understand. Yeah, we have 2 down. We'll talk later. And he was just so broken up. And I can remember that because that night the governor, who was then Alan Olson, called a news conference out at Frayne Barracks to talk about what the state was going to do to help with this manhunt for Gordon Call. And I guess on another story, which is just a fun story, because in North Dakota, you cover a lot of good news stories.
Yes, you do.
So I have another anecdote, if that's okay.
Please.
There was a guy who worked at the Falkirk mine. His name is Bill Thompson, no relation. And I found out from friends of mine who worked at the mine that he quit smoking on Groundhog Day. And every day since that time, he was marking that day by bringing treats for his people. So I got a chance to talk to him. It was the 10th anniversary of his quitting smoking. And I had a wonderful interview with him and a great story. The next year, he calls and said, I'm going to Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania to see the groundhog.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, would you contact me? And back in those days, you had those brick cell phones.
Okay.
So he had one. He said, sure. So on the air live, 6:30 in the morning, I have a guy from North Dakota watching as Punxsutawney Phil came out and saw a shadow.
Oh, that's wonderful. So was spring or summer, or was spring on the way? Do you know?
And he saw a shadow of 6 more weeks of winter.
I got you. I got you. Well, Dave, it's absolute pleasure having you here on today, and wow, it's such a joy. Thank you so much for what you do. Thank you so much for what you do for North Dakota.
Oh.
And we're wondering, because you have a perfect voice, can you sign us off going into our next section here?
Okay, let's try it. You are watching Studio 701 on KX.